Hello, Internet, and welcome to a very special Old Geek Young Geek sans Old Geek. So it's just a one-on-one between me and returning guest James Reiner. Welcome back, James.
Hello, thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. So, a while back, I ruffled some feathers in the Shenmue community by talking about game design and QTEs. I'm very opposed to the idea of QTEs because they're just really frustrating to me. They don't really, I don't know, they take away a lot of the agency and kind of like the experience of Shenmue for me, and just like in other games in general. I mean, in some scenarios it works, in some scenarios it doesn't. But people were very upset at the comments that I made, which I thought that I made a pretty, clear and, not really like offensive or rude comments. Mm-hmm. Except that my opening line was, first of all, fuck QTEs, but I
hate them.
I do hate them. I really, really hate them, and I think they're useless, and I think that we've sort of evolved with game design moving forward in this sort of industry. So, James, as you are the guest,
yay!
Yay! Just for a second time.
All right.
As your guest, I'll let you make a case for QTEs and why they're, I guess, important. And I know that they're a part of Shenmue, and they definitely came to prominence because of Shenmue.
That's right.
But could we do without them in Shenmue 3?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So it all really depends on how you want Shenmue 3 to, describe the game elements that existed in Shenmue 1 and 2. QTEs in the original games provided a couple of different, they're there for a couple different reasons. One of the reasons would be to, hide, not hide, but, to automate a more advanced, maneuver when it comes to fighting. For instance, there's a scene in Shenmue 2 when you're walking down an alleyway, and it's a very long QTE stream, but you're performing combat moves that you wouldn't be able to perform with normal controls. Mm-hmm. So I feel like QTEs are necessary if Shenmue 3 is going to have those kind of scenes as well. Which, to be honest, I think it will, given
I think it will too. I mean, that's just how Shenmue is. Yeah,
for instance, Yu Suzuki was talking about a type of gameplay mode where you reenact the Battle of the Three Kingdoms, if I remember correctly. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of micro events in there that would be kind of clunky for the player to describe the actions in with normal controls. So I feel like QTEs would be necessary in that case. Mm. Also, the thing with Shenmue, it's kind of hard to really generalize QTEs, because Shenmue uses them in such a specific way.
Yeah.
For instance, the QTEs where, like I said, you're doing advanced combat moves, but in Shenmue, the QTEs actually correspond to what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about them. Is that...
Yeah, exactly. For instance, when you and, a good scene is when you and Ren are following Yuan to his room. And I say his, for those of you who don't know, in the Japanese version, Yuan is actually a man. Mm-hmm. So I say his, so, just so you know. And, Yuan opens his door, and that causes a QTE to happen. But, it makes sense, because you want to kick the door down.
Right.
So the QTE is a forward and kick button.
Yeah.
So it makes sense in those cases. So I feel like Shenmue uses QTEs in a way that games like God of War does not. Because, God of War is just mash this button to do this.
Yeah.
Whereas Shenmue is perform this sequence of buttons, because this is, you're literally pressing the buttons that correspond to what the moves are.
Yeah.
Yet, either Yu Suzuki wanted to describe those events in a cinematic way, so that QTEs still allow the player to input the commands to get the satisfaction of the action happening. So I feel like they are necessary in that aspect.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the interesting thing about QTEs in Shenmue, is that, the game is kind of broken down to, two sort of sections. There's a section where, you walk around, investigate, and, talk to people.
Yep.
And that's pretty slow, that's slow pace, and, things are just kind of, going kind of smoothly. And then there's the fighting section, where, the camera angle changes, you can, the player can kind of sense, okay, there's gonna be a scrap, I'm gonna, have to fight here.
Yep.
And the cool thing about the QTEs, and something that I actually really like about them, is that, the actions that Ryu wants to do in the QTEs is, they correspond. So, like, X is your punch button, and A is your kick button, and, Y is your dodge. But the thing that I don't like about QTEs is that, like, I think differently than the QTE does. What I don't like about the QTEs is that they direct the player exactly the way that the game thinks that it should go. But I solve problems differently. I think differently. If it's telling me to punch, I might want to kick. If it's telling me to, like, grapple, I might want to dodge. Doing things like that. And so, like, that just kind of removes, like, my input and my ability to problem solve. So, and I can't always, like, read the situation quite as well. So, like, I'll just be, like, talking to somebody and suddenly, like, it'll break out into a QTE and I'm distracted, or, like, I'm just watching a cutscene or a conversation and then suddenly, press A! And, and I'm just like, I was not expecting that. And the thing is, like, I feel like these QTEs were just sort of injected into, these cutscenes so that there could be, like, another level of interactivity or some kind of challenge, that video games have to always be interactive and that they always have to have some kind of challenge.
Yep.
I don't really think so, especially for Shenmue, because that's such a story-driven game. It's so driven by its story and its characters and its narrative, and, like, there's so much in Shenmue that, like, you can just take in and just relax and, like, just kind of be there and immerse yourself that way, rather than always have to, like, press a button to interact with something. There are so many moments in games that I've had that are just, like, that have left such a huge impact on me when I'm not doing something, and kind of, like, taking it in.
Yeah, I get what you say. So do you feel like in those cutscenes that would have QTs, do you feel like you would get more out of it if it was just something you were watching and not interacting with?
I don't think, like, the experience would be lost. Like, I'm thinking of, like, the chase scene in Shenmue 1, where the guy gyps you out of a ticket to Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, and he starts running. Like, I don't feel like anything would be lost if it was just a cutscene. I feel like that whole experience, because, like, you catch them no matter what. Like, if you fail the QTE, you gotta go at it again. But, like, if it's just a movie, no problem. No skin off my back. I don't get frustrated. I don't, panic.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, in the case of Shenmue 1, more so than Shenmue 2, because Shenmue 2, to me, feels like that the QTEs are there to kind of embellish an idea that Shenmue 2 puts in. But anyway, going back to Shenmue 1, I feel like the QTEs are there as well, just because Yu Suzuki was exploring a lot of different ideas, a lot of different conditions about game design.
Yeah.
Like, Shenmue 1 has so many different systems that come into play. The whole idea of free roaming, the whole idea of I like to call it a radiant AI system, where, like, the AI or the NPCs are doing things even if you're not there to see it.
Yeah.
Actually, Bethesda coined the term radiant AI, but it pretty much comes from Shenmue. And I feel like the idea of quick timer events is another one of those ideas that Yu Suzuki was exploring at the time. It's not until Shenmue 2 that I really feel like they actually, they are there for a very specific purpose. Like in Shenmue 2, and this is a point I was trying to get at before, but I failed to mention it. Shenmue 2 uses QTEs to teach the player as well, because Shenmue 2, and I usually don't see a lot of people touch on this idea, but, like, it's teaching the player as Ryo is learning. So, like, while Ryo is learning the four wudu, you as a player are learning those ideas as well, and those ideas are, personified in the mini games that you do to get those to learn the four wudu. The best example. Yeah, sorry. The best example is when you go to Zhang Yu's barbershop.
Okay.
And there's a quick timer event in there. For those who haven't played it, you're learning the four wudu at the time, and there's a quick timer where you go to this barbershop where he puts a razor to your face or to your neck and says, no matter what you do, do not move. And a quick timer event pops up, but you're not supposed to hit it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that quick timer event was set up in a way to teach you, the player, an idea that that guy is trying to teach Ryo.
Yeah.
So I feel like Shenmue also uses QTEs in that aspect, and for that reason alone, I say that Shenmue 3 needs QTEs, because I think that idea is beautiful, the idea of teaching the player the ideas that Ryo is learning, and I feel like Shenmue 3 is going to dive into that subject more so than Shenmue 2 did, given the events that are occurring in the storyline at the time where you're with Shenhua and at Bailu Village, and the idea that Ryo's personality is changing. I feel like QTEs, if used in that way, are necessary to the DNA of Shenmue 3.
Yeah, and that's kind of part of it, is that, like, you know, QTEs are a part of Shenmue, and like, but I feel like they could also, again, like, I think they could just do without it, and you know, it's kind of like service to the name of Shenmue. Like, well, it's a Shenmue game, so we have to have QTEs in it. And yeah, you're right. Like, QTEs can be used in a certain way where, like, you know, in that moment, Ryu's trying to show restraint, and because, like, you know, throughout the entire game of Shenmue, like, you have like these QTEs that pop up frequently.
Yeah.
And so, like, you're just kind of trained, you know, immediately, you know, if something pops up on the screen, you gotta press it, because, like, that's just embedded into you. But
to be honest, I like them, because I just feel like they're challenging to me. I guess the only QTE sequence I don't like, and I think a lot of Shenmue fans will agree with me on this, is those planks in the Ghost Hall building in Shenmue 2. I've beaten Shenmue 2 countless times, and those planks in the Ghost Hall building still get me till this day. Actually, I was playing it, like, yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. And it took me, when I got to the 10th floor, it took me like 5 times to get past one plank. And I was trying to memorize them as I go, and but anyway, so the frustrating QTEs, maybe they can go.
Right.
But I think the idea of QTEs, like, teaching the player as well as Ryo to kind of, like, convey a fourth wall breaking lesson that the series is trying to teach us.
Right, and that's cool.
I feel like those are fantastic.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
But Shenmue is not the only game that has QTEs. They have, you know, moved forward or rather just expanded into other games. And one game that comes to mind is, Heavy Rain, Two Souls, and his other game, because they're all directed by the same guy. I think his name is David Cage.
Yep. Is it Indigo Prophecy?
Indigo Prophecy.
Yep.
And so that game, like, Indigo Prophecy, I haven't played it, but, like, I've heard that this is literally Simon Says. Heavy Rain I have played, and that's just how the game works. It's through QTEs. You know, it's just that level of interaction where, like, that's how you interact with stuff is through QTEs, and that kind of, like, got me used to the idea of QTEs. But at the same time, it doesn't have the same sort of association with actions that Shenmue does, at least. Because Shenmue was smart in its design by, you know, having leg and kicking actions assigned to A, you know, both in the fight scenes and both in the QTEs. However, with Heavy Rain, it is random buttons. I mean, they're going to be the same every time, but, like, it is sort of like a random assignment. Like, you don't know what button does what specifically. Like, I never press triangle twice for doing the same action. You know, it's just kind of random. And there are some times where, like, it does it really well, because, like, there's this one scene where Agent Norman Jaden, or Norman Jaden, is like, you know, suffering from extreme withdrawal from his drug habit, and he's, like, you know, reaching into his coat, but, like, the player has to, like, hit, like, 7 buttons on the controller in order for you to, like, successfully do it. And, like, it's engineered in a way that, like, you're most likely gonna fail. And that's interesting to me, but at the same time, I don't know, like, if that didn't have QTEs, I don't know how it would go about any of its interactive sequences, because it wants to be a movie more than it wants to be a game. And, like, I respect, you know, and admire the amount of work that went into, like, filming all the different motion caps for, like, every single possible outcome of, like, a hit or a miss or this or that. Because, like, the animation flows really smoothly. But, you know, the fact that it is literally just pressing buttons at the right time reduces it to a level of interactivity that is just so primitive and just, I don't know, it's disengaging in a way.
Yeah, I can understand that. The only one out of the 3 I've beaten was Beyond Two Souls, and I kind of felt the same way. I feel like QTEs are great if used correctly, and I honestly hold Shenmue as like the de facto standard as to how to do QTEs.
Yeah.
But I can understand like if like they're overdone or if they just feel arbitrary, like if the actions that you're doing don't feel like they have purpose, like you're just hitting a button for hitting a button, then then I can understand like maybe they don't have any purpose in a game. But like I said, I feel like Shenmue puts meaning behind the QTEs.
Yeah.
And it's for that reason that I feel like they're necessary. Because for one, they're a good way of doing, like I said before, actions that would normally be chaotic for input into a controller.
Right.
Also, maybe the game engine can't handle those type of animations during a scene.
But now I feel like, we're at the point of technology where the game engine can. Like, I always hate watching cutscenes and like, I shout at the TV, like, why can't I do that? Like, why can't I do that when I'm playing? Because, like, if I'm playing Halo and, like, suddenly Master Chief, like, does a backflip over something, like, I want to do that! I want to do cool stuff! But, like, I understand, like, the necessity of it, because, like, there is the X factor of the player. You can never, expect where the player's gonna go, what they're gonna do, and that's where the QTE, like, takes direct control over everything.
Yep.
And that's frustrating to me.
Yeah, I can understand that. And also, to go back to Shenmue a little bit, one of the other things, and I see this because when I hack the game, I can notice differences, but in Shenmue, QTEs also hide limitations of the game engine or the hardware that you're playing on. Like, for instance, going back to that one scene that I keep referencing, the hall, or not the hallway, I'm sorry. It's, I think it's in Wanzai. It's either the Lucky Charm Quarter. It's when you're racing after Zoo's assistant, and it's the one with the guy with the watermelon, that QTE string. If you actually like mod the game and you pull the camera away so that you're looking at the entire scene as it's happening, there's so much lag because the game engine is drawing so much on screen. So I feel like Yu Suzuki wanted to show a lot in the game, but he had to use QTEs to limit what the game is actually drawing. From a technical standpoint, to be able to show these scenes without, like, horrible lag. Yeah. So I feel like in the realm of Shenmue, QTEs are also there to be like a very clever way of masking limitations of the hardware by hyper-focusing on one thing. Which is why, like when you do very specific maneuvers in QTEs, it focuses just on that. Like, for instance, if you throw somebody through a stand...
But why can't this be all in a cutscene? Like, you can achieve the same thing through the cutscene. Like, if you throw in the QTEs, you have to put in the extra animations of, a fail or a success. And that, like, it just seems like extra work. And, like, I admire Yu Suzuki for the game designer that he is, because that's very smart of him to, like, do all that stuff, and, he realizes the limitations. Yeah. Don't want to give, like, 100% credit to him, because, like, I'm sure, like, the other team members were like, listen, we can't handle this. But, like, it's that sort of thing. Like, I feel like, again, like, that could just be done in a cutscene. Like, I wouldn't lose the experience or the tension of that chase scene.
Yeah, I think it's just also the idea, it's, like, maybe preference from the game designers as well. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think it's more fun when there's a QTE involved. That's just my preference. Like,
yeah. And that's the thing, is, like, I've realized that, like, it is a matter of preference, because, like, there are some people, who commented on that post that I made, who are just, like, so, like, just okay with QTEs. Like, they love them. They love them, and, like, that just blows my mind. Like, why? It's not good game design. Like, and they like with Heavy Rain, they brought up that one. They also brought up, like, the Telltale games. Have you played any Telltale games?
I played the first season of The Walking Dead, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I played that one. I played The Wolf Among Us, and I played Tales from the Borderlands. And those games had, like, those games had QTEs, but they were presented in a way that kind of helped the player. They were also very forgiving, because, like, there's a fight scene in the final episode of The Wolf Among Us where I know that I screwed up, but it gave it to me anyway, because, like, it said, like, hit circle, but I think I pressed square, and it gave it to me anyway. Or, like, hit the left trigger, but I hit the right one, and it gave it to me anyway. And like in Tales from the Borderlands, like you're supposed to swipe left or swipe right. It's presented in a way that doesn't just like assault the player with like flashing in the center of the screen. The arrow comes across the screen in the motion that you're supposed to direct it, and like that's helpful to me.
Yeah,
it's part of that presentation because like when it comes to Shenmue, like there's the high pitched beeping noise. It's flashing. It's rapid. You know, it's like if somebody suddenly like turned on a strobe light while I'm watching a movie, which is exactly what it is. Like, you know, wow, what's going on now? I suddenly have to press X, or otherwise I fail this, and then, well, okay, that's it.
Yep.
But I feel like Telltale and their presentation of QTEs works because, like, I feel like that works because the two parts, there's only two parts of the game. You know, the walking around, finding clues, or like talking to people, and then the action sequences, which are all done in QTE. And like, yeah, because like I haven't really experienced any sort of other interaction with my character. I don't really have much control over him other than like, you know, moving the cursor around screen and finding items and puzzle pieces and stuff like that. Where it frustrates me the most with Shenmue is that, you know, I have control over Ryu in fights where the action is ramped up, you know, and I can do more things with him. Like, when it comes to QTEs, like, okay, so I can do a roundhouse kick, you know, in a fight scene, but I can't, like, hop over a box. I mean, it's silly things like that really irk me because, like, I feel like there's a conflict of game tone where, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to phrase this in a way that makes sense. Because, like, you know, like I said, there's the walking around, investigating, talking to people, finding leads, and, you know, that's cool because I like the whole gumshoe detective investigation thing, and like it's a slow burn, it's a process. Whereas QTE, suddenly everything is ranked up to 11. It's high action, and you know you got to be on your toes or else everything, you know, sucks. And I feel like you're jumped by those things. Like you're not really expecting it. So when everything else in the game is like really slow, and then suddenly everything's high, at least with the fight scenes, like, you know, the music turns on, like the camera shifts, you see your little health bar, like you can get ready in that short amount of time to fight because you see this coming. Yep.
Well, wouldn't you make the argument then that because like Shenmue obviously is trying to be more than just a game, like it simulates real life, and it's true in life we are hit with these moments where we have to think on our toes. So I feel like you can justify those kind of events in Shenmue just by portraying that idea.
Yeah.
The idea that you're playing through Ryo's life, and there are times in anybody's life where you have to make a split decision. Now, one other reason why I like QTEs, and this goes back to the idea if they're used correctly, is that they also provide a choice to the player, whether that's like a choice of events or like a moral decision.
In what way? Because I haven't seen any QTEs that provide me with a choice other than, like, you know, possibly going left or right to follow, you know, somebody in a chase.
So in Metal Gear Solid, I guess the best, I'm trying to think of the specific time. I'll just give a generalization. So in Metal Gear Solid, I forget which game it is, you're presented with a choice to shoot somebody. And the QTE is established not by a flashing button on the screen, but with the idea that you could hit square to shoot this person, but you as the player have to make the moral decision whether or not you think that is okay to do.
Yeah, but that's me. That's not the game telling me what to do. That's the game is still in my hands. I'm still interacting. I'm still aiming. I'm still, you know, pressing the button when I decide, not when the game tells me to. I still have agency in that situation.
By definition, that is still a quick timer event, though.
No, I don't think it is. I mean, like, it's set up to, you know, force the player to look down the sights and, you know, make the call to make the shot. But, you know, it's still up to me to pull the trigger and, you know, to aim. I like, the difference between that and a QTE in Shenmue is that, you know, you have to press the button. in order to progress, or like in the Metal Gear Solid one, which I don't really remember which scene it is. Like,
yeah, I can't recall. I believe it's Metal Gear Solid, but don't hold me to that.
because I'm thinking of the one where like at the final boss fight with Metal Gear Rex, and he's got Shadow Fox or Gray Fox, and like you've got the RPG and you're aiming right at Liquid, but like every time that you hit the button, it doesn't let you shoot. He's like,
oh yeah, he's like, I can't do it.
Yeah, I can't do it. Like, he's right there.
Yeah.
But
no, yeah, because he would have killed Gray Fox in the process.
Yeah, but Gray Fox was already dead.
Yeah, it's his buddy, man. You don't want to shoot your buddy.
Well, he's gone in a cyborg ninja. So,
yeah, but yeah, you don't want to shoot your buddy.
I wouldn't, but that was the opportune moment. Though some sacrifices have to be made for the greater good.
Yeah, true.
But, railgun doesn't blow up the entire world with nuclear missiles that are undetectable by current technologies.
I thought that moment was really powerful.
I
like the fact where you hear him say that. I think it just adds a lot to the narrative
and to the character of Snake, because when that's another thing about like games is that like these are characters that have their own personalities, and when you just let them go to the player, there's a juxtaposition there, because like when you're in game and you're running over people and you're jumping out of helicopters and like blowing everything up, and then like during the cutscenes, like he's super serious and he's got a tragic backstory and everything like that. Like that's such a conflict. So when the character makes the decision for themselves, that's the character doing something and showing their personality. So yeah, I think that was a really good moment in gaming in general. Metal Gear Solid's a great game. And,
totally. I love the series. Except for MGS4, honestly, I was very upset with that game.
I haven't played 4, but I did watch the hour-and-a-half ending cutscene.
Yeah, the ending to that game was amazing, like that final 2 hours.
Yeah.
But the game entirely, I don't know.
I mean, I want to check it out because I also want to check out the newer ones. But anyhow, we're getting off topic, and so with that, I feel like we can end today's episode because we're out of time. So this was the first one-on-one episode of Old Geek Young Geek. Tell us what you think. Send us an email, all that stuff. You know what to do. If you like this episode, let us know. Send us an email at oldenyounggeek@gmail.com, or send us a tweet. I'm Svederik, Svederik, and Steven is Stephen A. Johnson on Twitter. That's Steven with a PH, by the way. Thanks for listening.